Hey, how you doing, Lou?
I'm doing very well. Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning, everybody. This is Judith Jameson and Lou, and this is the Judith and Lou show. I call it.
Well, nice. That's very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I like it. It has sort of a ring to it.
I'm just a guy.
Um,
That's all.
or I could go by like a nickname, Juju, or something. So it could be the Lou and Juju.
One of those couples names, right?
But we are here for.
Oh, we could be J Lo. Could be another J Lo, actually.
We could do something like that. That would be right. We could be J. Lou.
J Lo. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's better than what my girlfriend calls me.
Right? Yeah. Well,
she calls me Lucifer. So
Lucifer. Yeah, that's clever, but not really a compliment.
Yeah.
So we are here today with Makeup or Breakup. And what we like to do is talk about ways to help your relationships, build your relationships, attract healthy relationships. In fact, I think I'm going to have a guest on here in a few weeks that talks about the laws of attraction.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yep. So she's basically a life coach with certifications and training in the laws of attraction. And she has some really interesting ways that she teaches people how that works, because it's
wait a second. Is it like the secret law of attraction or like a relationship law of attractions, how to attract people?
It's more in general how to to be in a joyous and happy state and to be satisfied, right? Yep. And that looks different for everyone. So it could be people's jobs. So a lot of what she talks about is so many of us get trapped in that discussion with our inner self, which says, I'm not good enough. And especially if we don't get the job we wanted, or somebody broke up with us after like only 2 dates, or they ghosted us online.
Yeah.
And so we tend to quickly go to this feeling of like, well, that's the third time this has happened in 3 months. I'm just not good enough. And even if you don't say it, your brain is often thinking it.
Yep. There's I'm not good enough, and there's I don't have enough. I don't have a relationship. I want to go on this vacation. I want a job. I want that pocketbook, and just chasing that stuff around all the time. And the idea of being content and how that attracts, that like attracts like, which is another principle of the secret. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and a lot of times, like I always say, hate to say it, but like positive energy typically begets positive energy.
Absolutely.
The problem is, I think, and she and I didn't get into this, but my guess from what I've seen in my line of work is people who are positive and self-assured and they know what they're doing, that's very attractive to people, right?
Absolutely.
So people can be attracted to that, though, for the wrong reason. It's like, oh, that person is, they're successful in their work. They have a house, they have a beach house, whatever that is, you can have the wrong people coming at you, and you have to be able to discern. And so, we sort of, I sort of talk about that as, there's this discernment that has to go on. And so she didn't talk as much about that, but she did talk about interesting ways to make space in your life for what it is you want.
Right.
So, say your burning desire in life is to move to Chicago. Well, maybe you start opening yourself up to job opportunities in the next year or two, out there. So you're not waiting to make sure that it happens at 50 or 55. Like, why not try to get out there now? And what are the steps that it takes to do that? So,
and people don't understand the power of this in a positive way. They understand the power of it in a negative way. I mean, the classic example is, I'm going to blow the job interview. I'm going to blow the job interview. And what do? You go in and blow the job interview because that was your predominant thought. And that's what happens. Right. And they understand the negative of it. Or in your line of work, I'm guessing you hear this all the time. Why do I always attract the same type of guy?
Right.
And it's because of your actions. You have a part in it because you do attract a certain type of guy or a certain type of relationship. And those are the things you have to examine so you don't continue to attract that. People don't understand the positive aspects of it, though. You can manifest positively as well as you can negatively. They understand how it works from a negative standpoint, but they don't understand how powerful it is from a positive standpoint.
Right. Well, and the other thing is, when you were talking about that with relationships, so when I'm talking to clients who are date coaching clients, I say there is a pattern, and you need an outsider who can look, from a wider lens to kind of see what is it about you that like of the 55 guys that are pinging your profile on match.com every day,
Yep.
why is it the ones you reply to are those three, right? And that is the power in what I do, because when I'm working with clients, I explain to them, I don't care, really, honestly, I don't care if you're a financial planner or, you're a podcast person and you have podcasts, or you like to do TikTok stuff and that's like your game, whatever.
Yep.
Or you're a lifeguard. I don't care what your job is, or you're a waitress, whatever. Everybody needs to have some basic qualifications that they're looking for. They have to be the qualifications and they have to look for those. So what do we talk about? I mean, all the time on here, Lou, we talk about, being comfortable with yourself, feeling, good with your job, or you say, I don't love this job, but I'm going to do as well as I can in it while I sort of tread water and I look for a different job. Right.
Yep.
But you don't want to be the crusty curmudgeon who stays in a job for 20 years and you complain about it to everybody you meet.
Right.
Because some decent person that's comfortable with their lives and they've settled in and they're mature, they're not going to go for the person that like complains all the time about their crappy job.
Yeah, the upbeat, positive, well-together person that you're looking for isn't going to deal with that kind of stuff, because the reason they are upbeat and positive and have done well is because they've learned how to avoid that pitfall of having that energy in their life.
Right.
And women do it all the time. I just got sexist, but I'm going to stick with it because I think it's true, and you can tell me if I'm wrong.
Hey,
women all the time.
The hate mail.
Women all the time play. Well, a lot of women play the damsel in distress.
Yep.
Looking for the white knight, and there are white knight out there, I guess, but more often than not, that attracts guys who understand women in need, right? And they take advantage of that need.
Right.
That's what swarms around. I mean, if you get lucky, you may run into the white knight, but you more often than not, you run into guys who can play that particular need of a woman.
Right. Yeah. All right. So what we always say in Divorce Care, which is the support group I run for men and women who are separated, maybe going through divorce, or they're post-divorce, or even just post-major breakup. What we always talk about is when people say, well, I've been separated now for a year and a half, I should be able to date. So how do I know if I'm ready to date? And I always say, you're ready to date when you don't need to date. And they're like, what the hell does that mean? I'm like, you are ready to date when you don't need another person, when you are okay, when you go to your apartment or wherever you live, and you're okay with just being with your roommate, making dinner with your roommate, or you're okay with going home, opening the door, and it's an empty place.
Right.
Until you're ready to be alone and not feel lonely all the time. Because of course there are times, like 4th of July might be like a big celebratory time and somebody might go home and they don't have any plans and they feel lonely. Right. But some of that is, self-induced. So if it's 4th of July and I'm alone, what am I going to do? I'm going to drive my car to the town that's having town fireworks. Why can I not sit in my car like other people and watch the fireworks?
Yep. Yeah.
Like, does that make sense? Like, did you ever feel like that? I mean, absolutely. I know you're in a relationship now, but when you weren't in a relationship, didn't you kind of feel like, well, I could drive to the fireworks and watch them, or I could drive to the donut store and get myself a donut and sit there like the other people sit and drink a cup of coffee?
Well, yes. And it's such a key turning point in your search for a relationship, because you're more often going to get the relationship you want when you don't need the relationship. That position of having to be in a relationship, needing to be in a relationship, I need to have a boyfriend, I need to have a girlfriend, puts you in a very desperate situation and often leads to bad choices. It's you've got to be able to, I mean, that's when the magic happens, quite literally, is when you get to the point where, yeah, I'm willing to date and I'll look at somebody and explore relationships, but I don't need it. I'm okay. I can go home tonight and I can cook and I'll be okay. That's a great position to be in. That's a great position to be dating in. And from a more literal or practical standpoint, I think we've talked about it on the show before. If you haven't gone out to dinner by yourself, you're not ready.
Well, that's really funny that you brought that up, because I was just about to say to you, let's talk about going to dinner by yourself. Can you talk about that?
It's huge. It's a huge point, because a lot of people who are alone, they don't want to go sit at the table alone. And by the way, you don't have to sit at a table. Go sit at the bar and eat. And by the way, that's a great place because bars open up conversations. All you have to do is look at the person next to you. What did you order? or have you had this before here? I haven't been here quite that often, that type of thing, or talk to the bartender or, whatever. But most people are stuck, can't go to a movie alone. Of course, no one's going to movies anymore, but can't go to a
the
movie
movies
alone.
the theaters are opening up.
They're
So.
coming back. Yeah.
Mhm.
Can't go to dinner alone. Can't go to the fireworks alone that you talked about, or will not go downtown and,
Right.
just go out and do a little shopping on their own. And that's a very important point to get to, because that's the point where you can't approach dating from a need basis. I need to be in a relationship, because you get kind of desperate, and you settle because you take the first thing that looks comfortable enough so it may work. When you're in a position where you're okay with yourself and you want a relationship, but you're okay if it's not this week or it's not next week, then it's a much healthier way to approach the whole situation. Plus, it's mentally healthier and happier. You're a happier person when you're okay by yourself.
Right. And so one of the books that I use is this one, which is How to Get a Date Worth Keeping.
Mm-hmm.
And that is sort of the foundation of what I'm doing with single people when I'm helping them date. And the number one rule in the book is that you have to learn to have fun. Because if you look at this as an awful, horrible, tedious process, then you're going to say, this is what happens. Those are the people who are like, oh my gosh, I can't stand this. When they just have somebody that writes to them and then they start corresponding, they're like, well, they stop writing to everybody else. This is what people do when they're left on their own, to their own devices. Because it's like, oh, this is really good because he's kind of cute. He seems kind of interesting. He lives within 20 miles.
Yep.
This is going to work. And it's like,
I'm not going to do any better. Oh, what a horrible way to start a relationship.
Right.
I'm not going to do any better, so I might as well follow this.
Right. Well, it's that feeling of this looks pretty promising, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to focus on that. Well, the problem with that is, I mean, Lou, this is what I tell people every time, and I think you can relate to this. When you're looking for a job, and like when your kids were looking for jobs, when they're looking for even like a summer job during college, it's like, you don't put all your eggs into one basket. You don't say, oh my gosh, I'm going to get a job as a lifeguard at the YMCA. And then your kid doesn't apply anywhere else. You're like, no, you don't get to apply to one place. And so when you're looking for a job out there and, you're over 21 by now, most likely, because I'm talking about dating as well. So say you're in your late 20s and you're looking for a job. You have a few jobs, hopefully, in your back pocket, or maybe you went to grad school and stuff and you don't have any jobs. But who in their right mind applies for one job and sits back and goes, well, I'm waiting on that one?
Right.
There's nobody out there that even does that. That's like so comical, because it's like people are watching us going, Judith, that's a stupid example. No, it's not a stupid example, because that's what people do when they go to online dating, because they can't stand it, Lou. It's like, I don't like it. I'm uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
It's not in person. It's like, it's so impersonal. Like, I'm just sort of reading. And plus you have to work at it, right? You don't just not read someone's profile. But when you apply to a job and you say, oh my gosh, there's a job. There's a financial planning opportunity out in Lenox, Mass. Like, you don't just apply to it. You read the description. So, and then you apply to that in 20 other jobs.
Here's the problem with that in a relationship. When you just focus on that one person and you drop everything else, you start putting multiple dates together. And then at a certain point, you are in a relationship, whether you want to be or not. And a lot of people just get dragged along by it because, well, I don't want to break up with them. We've been dating for a while now. Yeah. And it's not that, the reason they're not with the person is because they like it, they enjoy it. This is a positive and fulfilling relationship. It's because I don't want to have the breakup talk. And they're into the relationship by default. That's what happens when you focus on one relationship too early, right? You end up in that relationship by default and you can't get out, even though not working for you as well as it, as you thought, or it's not working as well as it used to. Just like, well, I've been doing it. I'm kind of committed.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so what I tell people as their dating coach is, look, if I were your mom, I would never say to you, there's a, I went out to, one of the job seeking websites, and I saw a job on there. So go look for, IBM sales rep, go apply to that. And then go ahead and take a 2-week vacation and don't apply to anything else. There isn't anybody out there, never mind a career coach, which if you need a job, call me, because I know a really good career coach. But nobody in their right mind is going to do it. And nobody in their right mind is going to give you the advice of, hey, this is this great job opportunity, apply to it, and then sit back and go surfing for the rest of the week. And, you're so qualified. I bet you're going to get it. There's nobody out there that does that when they're looking. It's
Right.
literally every day. Your job is to find a job.
Yep.
And if you're looking for Mr. and Mrs. Right, you're looking for a relationship, then you have to take it like a job search. You have to read a lot of profiles. You don't have to kiss a lot of frogs, like I kiddingly say, but you do need to look at lots and lots of profiles and talk to lots of people. You're not going to meet 50 people a week. You're going to weed them out. And then you're going to talk to like 2 or 3 or 4. And then you're going to set up a coffee date. It's like, it just blows my mind that they look for the one guy or the one woman, and then they stop, sending out likes or little, hey, I like your profiles.
Right.
Like I see it all the time.
Sure.
And it circumvents the process,
Yeah, it's a funny thing, and as you were talking about that, I'm thinking how different it is for men and women, just by default. And women is searching through a lot of prospective, relationships, and have a lot of options to choose from. Guys, it doesn't work very much that way, so they're very susceptible to the, well, she actually responded to me, she's interested, so I'll go with that. And it's a positive, but it's not a reason to be in a relationship,
Right. Well, and that's what it is too, because what you're describing is a lot of people out there, the reason why they, let's just say what it is. The reason why they suck at dating is because they circumvent the process and they feel insecure. And there's a part of them that doesn't really feel like they deserve someone, which means they shouldn't be dating. Right.
Yep.
And they're just like, they're attacking the dating world and the dating websites, very gingerly, and they do it like, hesitantly. And at that point, they're not like excitedly all in. So what kind of a person is that? That's not even God forbid you're the guy that writes to that woman.
Yep.
Because now you're writing to a person that's kind of broken and you don't even know it.
You remember the old Groucho Marx jokes? I wouldn't be the member of a club that would have me as a member. It's like,
oh my gosh, I've heard that, but that's hilarious. I can't believe you remember that.
Many people are dating that way, right? They sit there and they get a little interest. Now, maybe you see this with women a little bit, but they get a little interest, and it's like, well, that guy's interested in me. Why is he interested in me? I'm not worth it. I wouldn't want to date a guy who's interested in me. That type of thing. That kind of works against you too, especially when you have those self-esteem issues.
Right. Exactly. And so, when I'm working with clients, one of the things that I'm doing is showing them, excuse me, for probably the first couple of weeks, I'm saying, you can't do anything. I rewrote or wrote your profile. Then we picked your photographs. Then we then you put your profile and your photographs up on 1 to 3 sites. Then you create a username and password. Then you give me the keys to that.
Yep.
And you don't do anything. And and they're like, what? I'm like, you watch what I do for 2 weeks.
Yep.
And you see, who am I writing to and what are they saying back? And who are the people that are writing to me on their own? And which ones am I writing back to? Which ones am I not? So your homework is pretty tedious, because I'm going to get a lot of likes and I'm going to get a lot of hearts, and I'm going to get a lot of people that say hi.
Yeah.
Usually not worthy of my time to write back to, because if I do it as a joke, like hi, like,
yeah,
like it's a joke, right? It's like, all right, well, I'm not going to start a conversation because you just said hi.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of work for my clients, because like you've talked about, people are randomly just going through, and if you look semi-decent, they don't even read the profiles. If you look semi-decent, they're going to like you or do a heart or something like that, right? And that's it. So you could have like 20 of those a day. You could have 10 on one day. You could have 20 on the next day. I mean, theoretically, if you wanted to, you could go out to each of those people and look at their profile.
Right.
You and I know that we're not going to take the time to do that when we're dating. But when I'm working with a client and I'm reteaching them and they are relearning. Or let's be honest, what they're doing with me is they're learning a healthy process they never had. So they're not even relearning anything.
Right.
They're learning how to date healthily. Part of their homework is that they have to go out and look at the profiles and the pictures of all the people that gave them a heart. And then what they're going to see is that I only picked 2 of those, because maybe just for the fun of it, I go out and I look and I say, you know what? These 2 people, they look pretty decent. I have no idea why they didn't write a note.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm going to give it a shot and I'll just say, hey, I like the fact that you go skiing in Killington. I love Killington too, period.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people, I don't know if you got this when you were online, but did you ever get someone that like they said like way too much and you're almost like, why are they writing so much to me? They should just write like a line and then I write a line.
Yeah.
Like if you're at a bar and you meet a woman next to you, you're not going to talk for 20 minutes.
Right. It's an exchange, right?
An exchange. But when they write like all this stuff, it's like, why are you doing that? You already had the chance in your profile.
Yeah.
So now
that first note is opening a conversation. That's all. And
opening a conversation. But Lou, what makes sense to you? And now you might just like when you were online, would you just write like a sentence or,
yes.
Hey, I noticed that you like pigs. So do I, or like what, like, it was just like, it wasn't like 25 sentences, was it?
No, because you don't know the level of the interest and you're giving an opportunity to gauge the level of interest in return. And by the way, that level of interest doesn't have to be tremendous at the beginning, just if they like you enough and aren't turned off enough to reply with a short note. And then you just keep the conversation going, let it happen at the pace it's going to happen. And, but you don't give your whole life story out in one note, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you talk about in the coffee date?
Well, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
So, refresh my memory. Would you hop on the phone with people usually within like a week or 2? Because that's what I tell my clients to do. Because
no, me on the phone.
You would just go for the date, right?
Yeah, you know me on the phone, and that's a me thing. So it's not necessarily something I recommend. Just no, not me. No, I wouldn't do the phone thing.
Right, but were you typically not? It's gonna be funny if you like blow all my strategies out of the water here, but I'm gonna take a chance.
Yep.
All right. So you skipped the phone, which everybody don't listen to Lou because you have to get on the phone first. That's just Lou.
It's funny what I do for a living, and I just have problems with the phone.
Right. It's like, you know what? You're phoned out.
Yep.
But were you writing long email letters back and forth before you had a date? That's my point. So tell us what was the exchange like before you actually said, hey, would you like to get a slice of pizza? Because knowing you, that's probably all you said was, hey, would you like to meet for pizza? Like get a slice of pizza or
not first. Not first. I would try to, and see, this is one of the skills I've learned doing radio all these years, is that the way you engage with somebody is to get them to talk about themselves. So I would usually pick out something in their profile that they liked or something that I saw, hey, what kind of dog is that? I like that dog, and, hi, I'm Lou, I'm from X, and, and just leave it at there. And because they're most comfortable talking about themselves, especially if it's an activity they enjoy or something like that. Or I see you went to, I see you went to
Disney World.
Yeah, I see you went to Disney World. Yeah, exactly. Something. Just pick a little thing and open a conversation and go from there. And then usually there's a couple of exchanges, and it's like, listen, I'm going to be in town for a meeting next week. Do you want to get a coffee in between and set up a very confined time period that doesn't take a lot of commitment, that isn't very like I said, isn't very intimidating, and then just go have a coffee.
Right. Now,
the woman that I'm with now, that was a completely different path.
That was a total, that was a bit of a one-off, but it's funny that you're saying that, because I was just going to ask you to share a little bit, because I know she's originally from New England, but she was living in California. She was a California girl.
No, she had spent some time in California. She's been all over the country, but she was back here at this point. She was actually in New Hampshire. Okay. And we had a couple of exchanges, and then she was like, and I'm sure you see this with your clients all the time, especially women. It's like, I'm just overwhelmed by this whole thing. I can't, I can't deal with it. I'm going to get off the site for a little bit. And then she gave me her email address when she did that.
No, it
And
happens all the time.
yeah, and then she didn't. We didn't get response, and as it turns out, she's lupus. She's got lupus, so she was having a battle at that point, and
Oh,
a
that's
young daughter, and she had a lot of stuff going on in her life, so she kind of backed off for a little bit. And
Mhm.
it was actually months, actually, and then we got back in touch and went out on that first date, and then I think it was the second or third date. She had been talking about going to California, throughout the whole thing. She was very upfront about it and everything, and all of a sudden, like, I'm going next month, that type of thing. So she went to California for like a year, and we kept in touch, and then she came back, and we've been dating since.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, so at the time, um, so how long were you chatting with her till you said, "Hey, do you want to get together for coffee?"
It was an exchange of a half a dozen exchanges, maybe, maybe less, 4 or 5 exchanges.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. And so, what do you think? Have you ever asked her, "Hey, this is a really good show. I love the show." Yeah, Lou's in the hot seat.
Yeah.
Judith's in the house, and
Yeah.
Lou's in the hot seat. What do you think she said? Has she told you at some point? Did you ever say, "Hey, I'm just curious, like, out of all the women and all the men out there, because we know there's millions,
Yep.
the two of us, like, who reached out to who first? You reached out to her,
I reached out to her first.
okay,
Yes.
and you probably like commented on her profile. So, what was it in her profile? Do you remember what you commented on? That's
Funny.
something.
I think I reached out on one site first and didn't get a response, and then reached out on Match and then got a response. Um, and she's an attractive woman, so I can't even imagine what her online experience was like.
Mhm.
So when she said she was kind of overwhelmed by the whole process, I believed it.
Right.
You know,
Right. A
but
lot of people get overwhelmed by it, and most people don't really like it. They don't like that they have to do this. But Lou, how many barbecues have you been to in your life where you didn't meet somebody?
yep,
Hello?
yep.
Like that, you know what I mean? Like the reality is you're probably not going to go down the street to a barbecue that someone said, "Hey, my family's coming up, and if you're around this weekend, come down." What is the likelihood you're going to meet someone there and date them and become a thing? Very, very, very unlikely.
Right.
Right. So do
To
you
be honest,
remember?
to
Yeah.
be honest, I think the defining feature was exactly what we talked about here, where, again, she's attractive, and I'm sure she got a lot of responses. And you know how guys can be, and in the different ways that they approach a woman and try to, try to start up a relationship with a woman. And my approach was probably, I'm guessing, in that crowd, one of the least
Offensive.
uh, aggressive.
Some of them are pretty offensive. It's like, no
Yeah,
offense. Really don't want to see a close up of your blue jeans. Let's leave it at that.
yeah, yeah. A little less aggressive. And
Right.
because I was at that point, I had reached the point, and it was a long struggle for me, but I had reached that point where it's like, I'm okay. It's fine. I would like to date. I would like a relationship. But the thing is with her, for me, and I'm a little bit different in this regard, is like, I'm not attracted to very many people at all. All the years I spent online, and it was years, there were maybe a half dozen women that I was just that attracted to even do any kind of pursuit whatsoever. But at this point, it was like, I'm okay. I'd like a relationship, but I'm not desperate for one at this point. And so my approach to her, and it wasn't a strategy, and it wasn't designed for her. It was just where I was at the point. It's like, yeah, I'd like to meet you. I'd like to date. I'd like to see where this goes, but I'm not desperate for it. I'm not being aggressive for it. I don't need it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Make any sense?
It does. But what I'm wondering is, did she ever tell you at some point, when you first got together, did she ever say, one of the things I liked about you when you wrote to me was,
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Not
well,
specifically. I
that's
can
your
ask her.
homework. That's your homework, because I would really like to know, not that we're going to have her on as a guest, because she probably wouldn't want to do that, but
Yeah.
I would love to know her perspective. In fact, if she would be a guest, it would be great, but she probably wouldn't want to. But
Yeah.
I'd like to hear, like, if you can come back with some stuff next week on what she experienced and what she liked about you, because there has to be something that she remembers. Like, I remember what it was that attracted me to my husband before we even met. Right. So,
Yep.
and you have a recollection of just having several, but not a bazillion exchanges. You remember asking her a question. because that's your style. You didn't just say, "Hey, I love your picture. You're so cute." I mean,
Yeah.
that's just
Right.
like,
Yeah.
well, people do that. I'm like, I just have no words for it. In fact, I always tell my clients, if a really good looking woman or guy reaches out to you, do not write back and say anything like, "Hey, gorgeous," or "Hey, I love your picture," because those kinds of people, being good looking, and especially if they've been like cuteness factor since they were a kid. Not everybody is. I mean,
Yep.
some people grow into it a little bit. Some people are kind of gawky and awkward in their younger years, and then they just sort of come into themselves and they just kind of blossom. But a lot of people, if they've been, kind of like the cute, pretty, Shirley Temple kid, they're used to getting all the attention
Right.
and they're used to getting all this flattery, and it's just a thing. And I
Yeah.
always say, why play into that even further? Because honestly, you shouldn't be out of the gates, because to me, if they have half a brain, they're going to say, "Oh, great." Like I would tell any of my clients, let's be a little cautious with this person, because
Yep.
like the first thing out of the gate is they're saying, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful." It's like, all right, well, first of all, I worked to get a really good photo, right? When we all have the photos where we look like crap. And then there's like a couple where we say to our friends,
Yep.
"I'm going to stand a little further back," or you say, or like, I always do this. I'm like, "Wait, let me see that picture before you put it on Facebook." My mom always does that. It's hilarious. I'm like, "Mom," like
Yep.
she's like, "Well, I want to see it before you do anything with it." "Okay, that looks good." "Yep." And she always picks the one that she looks good in, by the way, which is really funny. I'm like, "Mom," she goes, "They're not looking at you. They're looking at me. I'm your mom. You just brought me some scones." I'm like, "Oh my God."
Yep.
It's so funny. But when you start commenting on how pretty somebody is and stuff like that right out of the gates, it's
Yeah.
if they, like I said, or they're so handsome. First of all,
Just,
you're just stroking their ego.
that just puts you back in the crowd too, because they're getting it
Yes,
from everybody.
it
Right.
does. And I think it's just the stupidest thing. It's kind of like, I don't know if you remember being single, but when you're not dating and you're at a bar with a couple of friends, and even in the movies, usually, might I add, the movie that's a comedy, you see these examples of like, like the guy that thinks he's got all the game and the stupid things that they say to women,
Yeah.
and they say it over and over until they get one fish that takes the bait.
Right.
And those people that say like the stupid things like, I don't know, whatever, like, I don't know. I can't even think of like a stupid line. I'm thinking of stupid lines, but they're so stupid that I'm even worth talking about. But,
Yep.
there are people that do that when they go out to the bars, and that's their thing, because they know eventually, 9 out of 10 are going to say, "Psh, get out of here." But then there's one desperate person who's going to say, "Oh, really? You think I'm really pretty? Like, thanks so much."
Yep.
It's kind of
Yep.
redunculous when you think about it.
Right. Exactly. I remember one of the things that attracted me to her, as from the conversations
Okay.
that we had, was, and it was what I focused on a lot, and it was something that I was specifically looking for, because I tend to be, um, the way I put it, I like adventure, but I need a tug. I'm not necessarily going to go
Oh,
out and do something on my own, but if someone says, "Hey, let's go do this," like, okay, I'm in, and I'll go, and I usually enjoy it. Those are the best times. And she had lived all over the country and had, and done that. Plus, and to me, for her, and she was a single mother too. She had her daughter,
yep.
and for me, that strength to be able to say, "Hey, I'm going to go live here. I'm going to go live here," and just taking on the adventure, just taking on things, because I'm not that way, and I wanted a little bit of that in my life. I
Right.
I have a little struggle making changes and going out and doing things. I'll, like I said, a little tug, and I'll run along with you. It's no problem, but I do need that little tug. So I wanted that in a person. So we talked about that. We talked about, being a single mom. We talked about her
Mhm.
living in different parts of the country, and obviously she's an independent woman, which I kind of like too. The
Right.
ability to just pick up and go and move somewhere.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, Lou, is what I like is that you were acknowledging that she's a mom,
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was important. Yeah.
right? And to be honest, it's like you probably weren't saying to yourself, I want to find someone that's got, one or two kids. I want someone that has a daughter." Like, you weren't really probably thinking about that, but the fact that you're a dad, you were probably like, "Hey, that's, you know what? I'm cool with that."
Yeah.
And a lot of times what I find is, men and women, they don't think twice about it. And I think that you and I are the types that think, you know what, I could do that, but I'm going to see how this rolls, because sometimes depending on the relationship with the mother and the daughter, or like men that I would date, their relationship with their sons and daughters, it is okay to assess that.
Yeah.
Right. Because the mistake that people make, and I made it with my second marriage, which is not my current husband, when AKA Mean Jim, which was the nickname that my family gave him, there was a bond that seemed, kind of just fatherly normal at the beginning, but over time it was not normal and it wasn't healthy. And especially the girls, their reliance on their dad when they're like teenage girls, like you don't just get to keep going up to your dad and saying, can I have $20? Right? Hey, can I have $20? I'm like, what the hell is that all about? I'm like, first of all, at that time, they had jobs. So why would it matter that like you have to get an extra $20? And I used to say to myself and my friends, why does he do that? And they, you know what the response was? Why do they do that? And why does he do that? Because it's the pattern and he lets them.
Yeah.
Right. But I couldn't live with it. Eventually I couldn't, it was one of the many things I couldn't live with it.
Yeah. I wouldn't have chosen a relationship with a teenager involved. I mean, I was a little older, so, he's like someone with kids that are a little bit older, but you don't get to choose the circumstances all the time, right? And one of the things about it was that I learned about her through these discussions, and it was something I was looking for as well. And I think this is a good tip for people: be very aware of what you're looking for and what you're shopping for. Right. And it seemed like she had a life, and she was self-contained, and she, she was kind of in the same place. Like, I'd like to have a relationship, but I got this whole life going on. I'm okay if not. So, that independence of life was important to me as well, because it would allow me to keep my independence too.
Right. Right. So I'm imagining at a certain point, like you guys were actually having conversations about that.
Yeah, well, it was funny. There was one point, the first time we dated, and it was a couple of dates in, and she's telling me that the move to California. At the time, she thought she'd get through high school and then talk about moving to California. But then it came up, and it was coming up in a couple of months. And then she invited me up to, I hadn't met her daughter yet. And she invited me up to her house in New Hampshire. And it would have been meeting her daughter. And I was very reluctant to do that. And in fact, didn't do that because, listen, you're going to California. I don't want to get involved with this daughter. I don't want to, become attached to this daughter and develop a relationship and then have it broken off for the move to California, that type of thing. So that was all very much part of my thinking.
Right.
Well, and I didn't want to rush the meeting with the daughter just because, the move was happening.
Right. And not only that, but in general, it's not healthy for people to meet their dates' kids early on.
Right.
Because the fact of the matter is, at the beginning, you're in your honeymoon phase and you may be dating a couple of other people and you don't know that that's going to be the final be all to end all. Right. But now you've had 3 dinners at somebody's house and the kids are attached.
Right.
Right. They're either attached or they're angry that their parent is even dating, because most kids aren't looking for a third parent.
It's a very difficult position to put the child in.
It is.
They may be angry, as you talked about, you're replacing the other parent or something, but also that when you've got, in this case, it was a single mother and a daughter, they have a relationship. They have a little thing built up there. And anything that comes into that is a threat, regardless of, you may be the best guy in the world and all may work out great. But initially there's that little world you have that you guys are a unit right now. And it's going to be tough for the child. And it's not something you should force that quickly.
Right. Because the thing is, kids are adaptable and they know when they can speak up and when they can't. And if they see mom is super happy and brings some guy home, if there's a vibe that they don't like, which can happen, it's hard for kids to speak up and just verbalize why they don't like this guy that mom's got hanging around.
Right.
The other thing that I want to talk about, which I'm only thinking of it because we're on the topic, and obviously present guy excluded, but the reality is that the great majority, and I'm talking like most of pedophilia, happens with someone that the children know.
Yeah.
And it's usually a guy. All right. Sometimes women are an accomplice. So it could be like, you know, an aunt lures other young kids in for the husband, right? Which is, I know it's creepy, but I'm just saying. And then it's the uncle that actually is the, you know, as I like to say, you know, the murderer.
Yeah.
Or hopefully he'll be murdered.
Yep.
But this is why parents have to be really careful when they are single parenting. Do not be putting your kids at risk with strange men and women. I mean, because you could even be dating a woman who is out fishing for her secret boyfriend that you don't know about, right?
Yeah.
And the boyfriend or whomever or her brother, you know, has a pedophilia thing, right? I know it's creepy, it's weird, you know, it's sort of a little bit of a Jeffrey Epstein thing, but the reality is, like with Jeffrey Epstein, you know, allegedly from everything that we've seen, it was his girlfriend that was doing a lot of the luring. Okay. So it's very, very important to realize that moms and dads typically are not the offenders, but strangers who have no feeling of, you know, connection and pending remorse and whatnot, you know, they don't have as much of a problem with someone that's not their own kid.
Right.
So that means when you're dating, you, first of all, you shouldn't introduce your kids to someone that you're dating for several months until you know that you're a thing, right? You don't just say, oh, here's one guy I'm dating in March. And then in April, you bring another guy home.
Right.
But on top of that, do not leave your kids alone with these people, because those people are the ones that say, hey, you know what? I get it. You know, why don't I come over there at 9 and relieve your babysitter? And when you get home from work at 11, you know, then I'll just be there.
Right.
Do not assume, because, you know, predators are really smart. They're the people like that look like the guy next door, and they are not the creepy looking guys. So when you and I profile, we say, oh my God, like, you know, I say this a lot of times when I'm looking for my clients. I'm like, I'm personally not attracted to someone that has tattoos on every part of their body except like an earlobe. And even that's probably possible. I just have a difference of opinion. I feel like, you know, it's a lot of self-inflicted pain. I mean, it is extremely painful to get a tattoo, even a small tattoo. It's very painful. And especially certain areas like your leg, your arm, it's very, very painful. Mm-hmm. But regardless, you know, we sometimes will say, oh, if we looked at 10 men and we said, which one's probably the creepy guy, we're going to say, oh, it's the biker guy that has piercings and
right.
But that is someone that's self-inflicting pain. The person that inflicts on others is the one that looks like Leave It to Beaver.
Right.
It's the one that looks like June Cleaver's husband. It's Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah.
It's the guy that looks like the guy that you'd want to date. Well, maybe you don't want to date, but the guy that looks like he goes to IBM every day with a briefcase.
Right.
Those are the ones. And the reason why is because they're very good at blending in. You know, they blend in. They just blend in with a crowd. And they do it successfully. So when you're dating, whether you're a man or a woman and you're single, do not leave your kids alone, even when you introduce them.
Right.
Something comes up, you've got to run to your mom's. Take your kids. Do not leave them, you know, with the new boyfriend or girlfriend. Because you don't know. And I mean, women are usually not the sexual offenders. They're not usually the predators. They're not usually in the sense of sexuality, but they can be mean.
Right.
How many times have we heard the stories or seen the stories of the really mean stepmom? So when I was in college, here's an example. I was in college. I had a roommate. Let's see. Was she my second semester? Yeah, I think she was. My sophomore year. There was a woman that lived up the hall, and she and I became roommates.
Yep.
Really lovely girl. I mean, she was almost like too nice. She was like, oh, hey, everybody. She was like this tall, like laid back blonde, you know, and she's just always happy.
Yep.
You know, like when she got mad, she would just put her arms down by her side and just, you know, like kind of like act frustrated. But it wasn't like us where we'd be like, oh my God, I got an F. Oh my God. She'd be like, yep, pretty much didn't do too well on that test. I'm like, is that all you got? Is that you? That's it for anger, you know?
Yeah.
So fast forward, you know, during that year, I met her sister. So her sister, Carol, was a year ahead of me. Her sister was the same year as me. And I met her because she came to UMass also, UMass Amherst, and she was living in a different, dormitory complex. And she would come over and sometimes hang out with us and things like that. And somehow during the process of getting to know these young girls, these young women, and the younger one that was my age ended up being my roommate the next year.
Yep.
Get this, Lou. It's so funny because it was one of the first. So remember, I went to college 76 to 1980. Domestic violence, of course, has always occurred, but it was just slowly coming out. Women still were not calling the police. The police still didn't know what to do with it, right? Yeah. So it was still, abuse was still in the closet. And it was behind closed doors, and people that knew about it didn't even do anything because they didn't know what to do. Their parents got divorced when they were younger, like 8, 9, 10, something like that. They either got divorced or the mother died. Mm-hmm. I can't remember what it was. So get this. He remarried pretty quickly because he was a doofus and he didn't want to be like a single dad. So he's an idiot.
Yep.
And, men do that. Men remarry much faster than women. That's a fact. So you're not going to believe this. But somehow in our conversations, I don't even know how it came up. Maybe I was talking about some of the crappy things my dad had done, like to my mom, and they start telling me stories about things that their stepmom did to them.
Yeah.
So when the dad wasn't around, she would threaten them and say, well, don't tell your dad about this because he's not going to believe you.
Yeah.
And she would say terrible things to them. And then when she would get mad at them for things, and these two girls were like, maybe they were kind of, not angry type of young women because they were beaten down as kids, but she would put them in separate closets in the house for hours.
That's unbelievable. Yeah.
You and I sit there going, oh my God. Well, when you talk to more and more people in life who open up about abuse, they will tell you that that's a very common one because a frustrated parent or a babysitter, or babysitters could be really abusive. They put them in the closet, but then they let the kids know.
Last week, I got the story about that from a teacher. A teacher put a kid in the closet in first grade, by the way.
Wait, when did you hear about that?
Just about a week ago. But this was years ago. A long time ago. But it's
Wait, what was the story? You recently heard about a story?
I recently heard the story from someone, an older gentleman and so this is going back a few years, but he was in first grade and got put in the closet for like a half an hour by a teacher.
Can you even imagine?
Oh, I can't imagine. Right. And I'm like, God, that's horrible. And he's going, right. No, it was all right. It was fine. I had it coming. It's like, no, you don't put a 6-year-old in the closet for a half an hour.
Well, the other thing too is, so the fear factor is you don't know when you're coming out.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like, when you're a POW and they put you in the hole, it's like, like you don't even have a concept of, is it daytime now? Oh, is it night? Have I been in here for 12 hours? The fear factor alone. I get like anxiety, panic attacks, just picturing it because it's so scary. I hate the dark and I hate confined places.
But your point is good. Women aren't necessarily sexual predators at the same frequency that men are, but they can be emotional abusers. And
they can be emotional abusers.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And as we've talked about before on the show, abuse is a lot of different things. Physical abuse is the one thing that we all hear about. Like, obviously, if somebody's hitting somebody all the time, we know that they're like an abuser. But domestic violence is also emotional, like you just said. Mm-hmm. Saying really demeaning, horrible, awful things to kids, that's abuse. Or to their wife or husband.
Yep.
That's abuse. Holding on to the paycheck, holding on to the checkbook, not showing you the checkbook. Giving you $20 a week for your spending money while they do whatever they do with their money, that's abuse.
Yep.
That, so we can talk more about that another time, but it's so important to remember that when you're dating, you have to do it well and wisely and smart. You have to be smart. And unfortunately, there's a lot of stupid people out there, Lou.
Yep. And that's even before we get into, you see how many different styles of parenting out there, and not all of them are great.
No.
You may know the person that you're dating, but you may not know what their parenting, quote unquote, parenting style is, or how they interact with younger people. And it may not be something you want to put the kid in front of, especially early on.
Right. And when I was on the grand jury duty a few years ago, we had a case. in one of the towns up here in Essex County, and it was horrible because the stepdad had no idea that this daughter, who was slightly disabled, was being abused by her own mother.
Oh God, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He didn't know?
Nope. No, it was always, the daughter would concur. The poor kid was like 9 or 10, and she'd concur that she had the bruise on the arm because she fell off her bike.
Yeah.
Or she fell down some stairs or whatever. And he never for a minute thought that it was his wonderful second wife. And then it was a relative that figured it out and reported it to the police. It was awful.
All right. So these guys dated, went through an engagement, got married, were householding together, and he didn't figure that out. So be aware that you're not always aware of the full story on your partner. It takes a long time to really vet a person, and be careful about when you put your kids in front of that before you fully vetted the person.
Right. So here's the scary part. What if that guy had his own kids and they merged households? He did not have kids.
Can you imagine? Yeah.
No, because someone like that would be telling those kids, don't tell your dad, or we're going to put you in we're going to put you in an orphanage. They threaten them. Right. We'll send you away if you speak up. But we have to go because I have a 12 o'clock client call, actually.
Yeah.
But it was great seeing you, Lou, today. And I'll see you next week. We're not going to meet on Tuesday, but we'll be meeting sometime next week.
Yes. So pay attention to the website. It's going to be a special time next week for the show, but we'll be back next week.
That's right. So we'll be back next week. Be well, be healthy, everybody. If you need any help, just go to my website, judithjameson.org, and we'll see you later.